All right, my tiny friends, we are on chapter 30, which is the very last chapter in this book called The Sideways Stories from Wayside School. And this chapter is called Lewis. And that's the picture. If you want, you can pause this thing and see if you can remember the names of all these kids that are around here. For example, this one's Nancy. All right. Chapter 30, Lewis. Lewis had a red face and a mustache of many colors. He was the art teacher at Wayside School. It was his job to see that the children didn't have too much fun during lunch and recess. If you haven't already guessed, he was the one who wrote this book. On June 10th, there was a blizzard. Lewis was afraid that the children would have too much fun, so nobody was allowed outside. "Class," said Mrs. Jules, "after you finish your lunch today, come back up to the classroom. You are not allowed outside." The children all went to the lunchroom. Mrs. Mush had made tuna surprise. They looked at it and then hurried back up the stairs. There was nothing to do. "Now, class," said Mrs. Jules, "I know you are all bored, but I have a special surprise for you." "I hope it's better than the tuna surprise," said Mauricia. Mrs. Jules continued, "Lewis is going to come up and entertain us. He will tell us a story. Now I want you all to be on your best behavior." When Lewis walked in, all the children booed. "Are you going to tell us a story?" asked Bibi. "Yes," said Lewis. "Well, it better be good," Bibi warned. "It better be better than the tuna surprise," said Butterfingers. I thought the tuna surprise was good," said Lewis. "You'd eat dirt if they put enough ketchup on it," said Mac. "Hey, everybody, be quiet," said Todd. Let him tell the story." "Not too loud, Lewis," said Sherry. "I'm trying to get some sleep." Lewis sat in the middle of the room, and all the children gathered around. And Lewis began his story. "This is a story about a school, very much like this one. But before we get started, there is something you ought to know so that you don't get confused. In this school, every classroom is on the same story." "Which one? The 18th? asked Jenny. "No," said Lewis. "They're all on the ground. This school is only 1 story high." "Not much of a school," laughed Damien. Lewis continued. "Now you might think the children there are strange and silly, and that is probably true. However, when I told them stories about you, they thought that you were strange and silly." "Us?" the children answered. "How are we strange?" "I'm normal," said Stephen. "Aren't I?" "Normal as I am," Joe assured him. "The children at that school must be crazy," said Leslie. "Real Lulus," Mauricia agreed. "Tell us about them, Lewis," Bibi demanded. "For one thing," Lewis said, "none of these children have ever been turned into an apple." "That's silly," said Dee Dee. "Everyone's been turned into an apple. It's part of growing up." Lewis continued. "Dead rats don't walk into classrooms wearing raincoats." "What do they wear, tuxedos?" asked Todd. "And girls never try to sell their toes," Lewis added. "Well, no wonder," said Leslie, "at today's prices." Lewis continued. "And they don't trade names or read upside down, and they don't turn mosquito bites into numbers, and they don't count the hairs on their heads, and the walls don't laugh, and 2 + 2 always equals 4. "How horrible," said Damien. "That's not the worst of it," said Lewis. "They have never tasted Mauricia-flavored ice cream." A hush fell over the classroom. "Mrs. Jules, I'm scared," said Allison. "Is there really a school like that?" "Of course not," said Mrs. Jules. "Lewis was just telling a story." "It was a good story," said Leslie. "I thought it was stupid," said Kathy. "I liked it," said Rondi. "It was funny." Mrs. Jules said, "Lewis, it was a very entertaining story. But we don't really go in for fairy tales here. I'm trying to teach my class the truth." That's all right, said Louis. I have to go down to room 29 now and tell them a story. And he started out the door. Class, said Mrs. Jules, let's all thank Louis for his wonderful story. Everybody booed. And that is the end of the book. I hope you liked that one. That was a fun one. And if you have any ideas for what we should read next, I have a couple. But you can definitely have your mom text me and we can try to figure something out. I was trying to decide if I was going to tell you what I think I'm going to do, but I'm not going to. So yes, I love you very much. Thank you for listening to me read Sideways Stories from Wayside School. I love you, my tiny babes.